And here we are. Cool. All right, guys, my name is Len Volk. Here today we're going to be talking about the Terraform. And before we begin this presentation, just very quick overview. Why are we talking about Terraform? So imagine yourself, you come into any other country, right, outside of US, Europe, whatever, and you can talk to the same language. Everybody, with any people who you're gonna meet, right? You can talk to go to the restaurant, right, and you can freely speak in the same native language in that country, right? So that's exactly what Terraform is. Basically, it helps you to communicate with any developers on the same Terraform language, understand what they're doing. Doesn't matter what provider they're using, and by provider I mean any cloud provider or even on-premises, let's say Hyper-V, OpenStack, or VMware for that matter. And where it gets really beneficial, let's say during the meetings, right, instead of taking the notes and going all over the same topics all the time, right, you can just simply take the code, read it through, and obviously it's going to be slightly different from AWS, from Google Cloud and Azure, meaning that, let's say we declare our network as a VNet. In AWS it's a VPC, right? But the idea, the majority is still going to stay the same. So, and this is where we're coming to. I'm not going to do any slideshow, no PowerPoint, and the reason being we gonna fire up another presentation, hopefully starting from the next week. And the guy name is going to be, and again, I apologize, I keep forgetting his last name, James Dumont. So he is, we strongly believe, I mean, he's really good, smart guy when it comes to the Terraform. He developed multiple modules, which he published on the Terraform site. And those are incredible. And as a matter of fact, what you're looking at right now, that repo is going to be shared after that presentation, and strongly encourage you, go to the README file. I dropped here specifically all of the different links where you can get more information on the Terraform. And one of those would be specifically to the James blog and some other references when we're going to be covering more details for the state file. And before we jump into the whole demo, very quickly, right? So since all of us already professional with PowerShell, ARM template, right, and hopefully Terraform as well. So when you come to those README file, you will see this link. That's like high level of overview where Terraform is different from ARM template. For now, I don't want to bother you with reading those that blog. All I'm gonna do is, now I apologize if the screen is too small. Probably it is. Let me just try to enlarge it. Let me just pick up on you. Hey, Dylan, is it good? Can you see that? Those three squares?
Yeah, you can see them, but they're pretty small.
All right. So guys, I'm just gonna announce what it is. But basically, look, the way Terraform is gonna work, right? You're gonna declare your variables in the extension, with extension TFRs. So those are going to be changed. Those going to be dynamic, and that's going to be changed between different environments. And those environments going to be dev, seed, UAT, prod, and DR, right? Thereafter, it's going to be initialized, those variables, in the file named vartf. And then, of course, the whole code itself is going to live in main TF. And this is high level. We're going to touch base on the same procedures, but then we're going to also, on the high level, cover how it could be more robust. But just to simply to get you more familiar with the extensions, it's TFRs for dynamic, .tf, it's really where the static values is going to reside. Where it also gets more important with the Terraform and ARM template, it is right here, and I'm just going to try to do it maybe bigger. Okay. So state file. Basically, what's going to happen, right? And we're going to cover this in more details in the lab. Whenever you're going to do the deployment, every deployment is going to create the state file, and that state file has to reside either in the blob storage, locally on the machine, if you for whatever reason desire to deploy the Terraform from your workstation, you're going to capture that state file. Inside of the state file, it's going to be everything, whatever you deploy with your code, which lives in main.tf. where it becomes important. The ARM template, the way it works, right? It doesn't have any, it doesn't keep track of any records what has been deployed. So every time you're trying to redeploy something, by default, it's going to use incremental. And what it means, it's still going to check, it's still going to be API call to the cloud, in our case, Azure, for that example, making sure, hey, everything is staying the same. And then it's just going to say, okay, nothing's going to change and it's going to finish the job. But API call is going to be initiated. Now assume that you are doing a CI/CD pipeline and there's like 1,000 developers deploying multiple pipelines at the same time. There is a limit on subscription. I don't remember how many, but there is a limit on how many API calls could be initiated. You can hit this limit. In the big company, that would be the problem. The way Terraform works, however, as we just described, right, whatever you deploy once is going to be captured in the state file. The next time you're going to run it again, what Terraform is going to do, it's going to take a look at your main.tf, see what resources you want to deploy, check it with the state file, and if nothing has changed, it's going to say 0 resources needs to be updated. It's not even going to bother with apply job to deploy this infrastructure to the cloud. So basically, you're saving API calls to your cloud provider. So far, so good, guys. Any questions? And hopefully it's not. So yeah, because it's simple, easy. What we're going to do now, let's go to the pipeline. And that's exactly what actually Mike was mentioned that next session, what we're going to do is Mike's going to show you the private features or previewed feature, right, where he's going to enable the multi-stage pipeline. I already have it enabled. And again, the reason why, just very quickly come over here, is we have, as a matter of fact, let me even take a step back and come back to our pipeline. Because our pipeline, which we're going to deliver as a YAML file, is going to be staged into 3 different stages. First one's going to be, jobs init. And init, from just for simplicity's sake, if you recall previous session by Mike, when he was showing to us how we can initialize any folder and make it Git aware, you would do git init, right? And then it's going to create the hidden directory, and it just basically it's going to be ready to capture all of the changes, right? So Terraform works exactly the same way. You run the job init, and what it's going to do basically, it will look at your code, whatever you have in .tf, and those you can see right here on the left, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2. It will check on any dependencies if you are calling any external modules, and you're going to see that too. Like when I'm going to be initializing the call to the GitHub and pull out a template, and it will cache it locally. So basically what it's going to do is it will create another file here, folder .terraform, and in there, it's going to capture all of the resources required for Terraform to deploy that resource. Module would be one of those. It's going to be more. We just don't want to cover it right now because we don't have much time. But most importantly, all of the modules is going to be cached locally, and that's important. This is where you need to make sure that your links or passes to the modules are done appropriately, because this is where it's going to be again important for the deployment. With that being said, very quickly, let me do it this way. My intent is for this demo is to kick the job and then come while it's going to be deploying, because it's going to take us some time, right? We're going to come back to the code, and I'm going to cover how I designed the code. If that sounds fair, and I'm going to pick up on Slava. Slava, is it good? Sounds fair? I'll take the silence as yes. Cool. So, by the way, worth to mention, right, again, I'm following up best practices as Mike was teaching us on the previous session, right? I'm deploying everything, all of my changes, not to the master, but to any other branches. So at this time, it's going to be SIT. I'm going to click on run. We're going to get this party started, right? As you can see here on the right, under the jobs, we have init, plan, and apply. Those we just covered before. Very quickly, I'm going to come back to our code here, and let's cover over what we have for the pipeline, how it was designed. So stage, it's dev, right? In my case, even so, yeah, I'm deploying an SIT, but really, like, I'm considering my code as a development for now, for this presentation. The first job is going to be init. We just covered that, right? We're going to be utilizing the self-services containers, right? Keep in mind, it's going to be Docker container under the hood. right? That container is going to run Ubuntu. Well, it becomes important right here. So we're gonna get the secure file, and that secure file is TFRs. We covered that too before, just a few minutes ago, right? This is a dynamic values. That file is, if you go back to the README, because I want to make sure you guys are comfortable if you just want to replay this video, replay this demo again on your own. So this is what you're gonna do. You're gonna create this file. You're gonna only put those two values here, right? And this is in order for Terraform to authenticate to your subscription. And you're gonna drop it over to, gonna go to the library, gonna go to the secure files, and this is where you're gonna upload the secure file. So far, guys, so good. Any questions? Just want to make sure everybody's following. Azaria, if you have any questions so far.
Nope, no questions here.
Okay, good. So just making sure, again, my voice is heard. Perfect. So guys, let's go back to the pipe job. Okay, so in here, that is only for my own fun. Again, I don't really need to do line 24. It just don't even mind it. As a matter of fact, if you recall from the previous presenters, right, Tom Gamble was showing us how he's doing his deployment, and I borrowed most of this from his presentation. So basically, I don't think yeah, really we don't need line 24, so don't bother. But keep in mind on this following fact, that in here, line 32, right? I need to pass arguments from that specific file, from the TFRs. Those going to be three: environment, application name, and regions, right? And actually, as a matter of fact, guys, I think I talked too fast because I lied to you. It is really, if I go back to the library, go to the group, right? This is my environment, region, and some other stuff, right? Those would be needed for any other trigger of the job. So let's come back to the line 32. We're going to capture right now those three environments. And we're going to go back to the, yeah. So once it's captured, we need to call line 31. So 31 is really, as you can see, init.sh. So I'm still in the tf_arm bastion. Here you go. So I don't know, for those people who are familiar with Linux, it's kind of straightforward. For more Windows guys, it's basically what I'm saying here. I'm passing E, C, and R, and there is some values in the inside of those. So now I do my while do loop, and I'm gonna capture those guys, those variables, right? I'm gonna make sure they do exist, and I think I'm missing actually one more if statement. Just didn't have enough time to add the region, for example, right? It will only app name, as you can see here, environment, and I might as well add one more region for that matter. But again, it's just only simple validation, so it's not gonna hurt us. I'm creating the resource group. I'm just combining those two. I'm also creating the store account name, and store account name needed for the state file, which we covered in like before, right? The next step would be, we need to make sure, hey, do we need to create the state for the storage account or not? Yeah, it's not created, so let's go ahead and create it. So we don't worry about that piece. For the storage account, in order for Terraform to authenticate, we need to have the access key, SAS token. That's what we're going to do on the 58. Then we're going to go to going to create a container, right? Because it needs to live somewhere, that state file. And pretty much this is where the magic is going to happen. So init job is going to initialize Terraform, right? But that hidden directory .terraform, it's no longer reside on my local machine. It will be uploaded to that specific state file and that container. So far so good. Any questions, guys? I'll take a silence as a no, so it's good. All right, so let's go back to the pipeline. So we're done with this piece. The next stage, it's going to be right here, plan. So what plan's gonna do, for the first time, state file doesn't have anything, right? Because we just only initialized it. But keep in mind that, again, we're creating another container, right? And because of that, we need to copy whatever we just created in the first job to the second job, right? We need to pass those variables and any files which has been created to the second phase, right? So Terraform would understand, okay, what do I need to do next? So, and that's why we are going to skip half of those just in the favor of time. But you can see right now I'm going to call line 62. So 62 is really plan SH. Let's come back to plan SH. So in here, that's going to be a little bit more tricky. Again, we're passing the variables. We already touched base on this, right? Doing some validation. That's nothing. And then we're going to go to the plan, Terraform plan. However, here what you can see, I'm saving the plan. And I want to make sure that I capture inside of this plan all of those additional variables. And one of this, as a matter of fact, I don't know, I believe somebody was asking this question yesterday on our forum, but there's going to be Windows password, right? So I want to make sure it's secure. Therefore, when we went over here to our variables, as you can see, I put the lock. Basically, this is all I did. It's not gonna show it to me, but if I do it like this, yeah. So I click on the lock and I created my secret password. And that's going to be fun because we will see the gotcha of the state file once the application is deployed. Because right now, as you can see, it's secure. No one can see it, but it's going to be a little surprise once we, again, once we finish with the deployment. And basically, to do the final step is we would jump over to the apply. We're going to put the flag that, yeah, plan has to be successful. If it's not, don't even bother. Don't even go to the apply job, right? And again, logically speaking, still the same container. We still need to, if you recall that .terraform, that hidden directory, which has all of the magic, it needs to be copied over to another pod container, right, for that matter. And then once it's in there, we can execute the following script, which is in our case line 90. So right here, we're gonna go to line 90, which is our apply. And this is trivial, right? Because what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the plan which we saved previously, right? And we copied it from one pod to another pod on the self-services deployment of Azure DevOps. And all we do right now, we do Terraform, apply. I'm just gonna put the flag out approve because I don't want to Azure DevOps wait for the approval, and I'm gonna kick it in. With that being said, just very quickly, let me go back here to our pipeline. And what we have here, this is still spinning. If I would be able to show it to you. We can come back to this. All right, so it's still deploying. Now let's see why it's taking so long. If you recall what we've been discussing, right, we always need to make sure that when we talk to our customer that we can be bilingual, right? We can talk, hey, we can talk ARM template, we can talk cloud formation if it comes to the AWS, and as well as we are familiar with Terraform as well. So for that reason, what we do here in this specific example is we're going to come back to the variables TF. So as you can see here, nothing is declared, right? I mean, everything is declared, it's not initialized. Initialization came from the TFRs, right? And that TFR, this is exactly where I'm going to come back to this very quickly, just making sure we're all on the same page, right? So this is our TFR. So this is where we initialize our variables. Here it's pretty much nothing, right? And then if you recall also OS password, same type of deal. We picked this specific part. We picked it up from variable groups. That's our password right here. Declaration, initialization right here. So we're good to go. Some of them, as you can see, so I'm basically, yeah, maybe I was supposed to start from the beginning, right? What I'm doing, I'm creating the Bastion hosts and a few VMs which we would be able to access with a Bastion on the port 443. It's going to redirect us over to 3389, right? So I know that in my deployment, those values going to be static, right? Because my subnet, my CIDR, and specifically the subnet for the Bastion subnets, right? It's not going to change. So that's why I don't really care about the TFR. Nothing, as you can see, jump, let's say variable jump sub. You don't even see it here, right? Why? Because I already initialized it in the .tf. So just again, keep in mind that the same structure, and I apologize for the small fonts. But if I initialize my variables here in var.tf, I no longer need to specify any of those right here in the TFRs. And I don't know, guys, I guess like somebody can confirm like we are still on the same page. Joe Norman, are you good? Any questions so far? Joe, if you could speak up, unmute yourself. Guys, again, I guess you're silent, so I'll take the silence as no questions. All right, cool. So let's go back to our more fun stuff. So we're gonna go to the bastion, and in here, right, all we do, we go to the resource group, right? I'm just doing trivial regular expression, right? I'm creating my resource group based on those variables which we created prior, right? I have those variables already with which location and which tags I need to provide. And just very quickly, just to show you that I'm not lying to you. Yeah, I got all of those tags. Those are right here, right? It's coming as an list or array. And I'm gonna come over here. Right, so this is where we're gonna put all of the tags just to make sure we come in to our subscription clean. Everything is keeps track of what is going on for the billing and some other references. And basically what we do now, once this part is done, we're gonna call Azure Bastion. What this does, because it's gonna be done with ARM template, and just yesterday, as a matter of fact, Terraform announced that we can deploy the resources, Bastion resources, with Terraform. The day before we could not, so that's why I put together this type of approach, right, where if I still need to create the resources and Terraform does not support it, or ASE, I remember, for example, Azari, it was one of your questions, right? You cannot do ASE with a Terraform. So in that case, what you need to do, you need to call ARM template. But if you want to stay clean and you want to use one deployer, you're still going to fire up the job from the Terraform, right? And as well as you can do Azure CLI, you can do PowerShell, same type of deal. In our case, it's ARM template. So basically, what that's going to do for us, it's going to go to, let me make sure if I can. It's on my LAN walk. As a matter of fact, guys, you know what? Maybe I'll do even better way. Just again, just to make sure you got more value out of it. So if you come over to the README file, you can click on the question. So all I've done, right? I said, hey, I fork this module to my repo, right? So just in case if I need to do any modification, whatever it is, all of us, I believe, already familiar with how ARM templates is working, right? And I said, okay, I'm going to be utilizing this code. I'm going to pass some variables, right? And those would be right here from line 23 to line 29, right? All of them would come over to that template. Basically, right, and then this is how the job's going to trigger, right? So this is how the ARM template is going to trigger, but it's all going to come all out of the Terraform. Guys, any questions so far? Any explanation? Maybe you need to know, like, hey, like, why do we do U? Why do we utilize these parameters? Because, for example, in my case, see what I've decided to do. I don't want to modify as much as I can. Just leave it alone, leave it vanilla, whatever Microsoft has developed. In that case, I'm kind of following on the best practices, and I'm saying, listen, I'm deploying my infrastructure, but if Microsoft already created it, why do I need to reinvent the wheel? So basically, I don't change anything in there. And that's why, as you can see very quickly, the subnet and the NSG is going to be created inside of this template. So basically, if we look into here very quickly, and I say, define it like this. Right, yeah, so you see all of this NSG, and again, and the CIDR block, the CIDR block for the VNet, I created myself, and the reason why, because as you're familiar with the Bastion is only pass. You still need to create either Linux or Windows machine, and you would be able to access those with 443, right? But for that reason, right, that's why I'm kind of balancing on saying, okay, VNet is going to be by Terraform, and those machine, in my case, VM scale set is going to be also Terraform, but Bastion is going to be done by ARM template. And that's why, again, that's why I'm passing all of this stuff, right? So what you can see here. So coming back over to my jump box right now, what we mentioned, right, that we still need to, and as a matter of fact, let me very quickly go back to our pipeline, see how this guy is going. And here you go. It's like demo gods favor me. Okay, so this has been deployed. If everything goes well, then I should be, theoretically speaking, should be able to, no, not this one, right here. I'm gonna come back to the Terraform in a few seconds just to finalize the code. But I just want to make sure that what we just described. So my application name, if you recall, right, we had the application name, and the way we named it, it's ADO, Azure DevOps for that matter. But if I go back to the library, security groups, app name, ADO TF, Terraform, perfect. So if I would go back to my resource group, those I'm gonna see. So I created 3 resource groups. And guys, that's gonna be a little bit important, specifically if you want to use PIM, Privileged Identity Management, and just-in-time access for your Bastion deployment. You need to put, let me just go right here, your VMs, and in my case it's a scale set, needs to be in its own resource group. And that's only for the JIT to give an access to it, because you can, unfortunately, again, right now, you cannot do JIT only to the network interface. You have to give an access to the entire machine. So that's why it's easier, in my case, it's just to drop them to another resource group. Any questions on this, by the way, on this perspective, that why I'm creating three different resource groups? Dylan, it looks like you can talk, and like if you have any questions.
No, I don't have any questions, but I noticed there's a question in the chat actually.
Oh, guys, I am sorry, I'm not following the chat. Could you tell us more about state file? For example, what format it uses? Guys, perfect. All right, so the state file is good. It's going to be in JSON format. I definitely want to cover it because that's exactly where it's going. I want to finalize this presentation with the state file because this is where we're going to see the gotchas of the Terraform. And again, it's going to include not only the security wise, but also because we are utilizing other products like ARM template. So all of the stuff we're going to cover in a few minutes, I promise. Not going to forget. Cool. Dylan, thank you so much, by the way, for letting me know. So guys, we're going to come back over here to the jump boxes then. And scale set, again, just for your simplicity's sake, I didn't even do much. It was blindly copy paste from that blog. We have a wonderful documentation which supports Terraform. Honestly, I was pleasantly surprised on that. I just slightly modify for that project, right? I just use the full blown instead of core, right? And specifically with my password, right? But most of this time, I decided to keep it simple. I could have done what I could have done is to put line, let's say 38 to 41 as a map variables, right? And drop them over to my .tf or even TFRs and say per environment it's going to change, such as in dev. I probably don't care about the SKU, right? Or the size of the machine, but in prod, I want to make sure it's a beefy box, right? So like it shouldn't be standard B1, it should be like some higher level of the machine. And also depends how many disks I need to. So all of this stuff, just keep in mind, like whenever you see those variables, it's just for simplicity's sake to put everybody on the same page. And when James is going to present his best practices, and those going to be probably like 3-4 sessions, he's going to dive into the details, and I'll let him speak because I feel like he's 100% much more knowledgeable in Terraform than at least myself. So that's why I'm just only going to bring you up to speed, and then we all of us gonna ask him a good right question. So I just want to make sure those questions would be the right for that smart dude. Okay. So coming back to scale set, right? So we're gonna say here basically is just maybe slightly mentioning on the .tf. apologize. Let me go to my variables right here. So in version 12, and we're using version 12, by the way, right? There's a new type. Just before, right, you could do string, and or string would be by default, right? Like as you can see here, right? You don't even need to declare it. But in that case, you need to put you need to do the declaration like this, right? In my case, I can put number right now, and I don't even need to worry about any quotations, right? It just will be like straightforward number. Also, just keep in mind, and there's more how we can. And by the way, James is going to cover this too, just to get you more interested into this. When you can do exactly the same way as you do in PowerShell, when you can output the whole entire object, right? And that way it becomes important with your module. Instead of doing output of only one single variable, you do the entire object. And now you can you can pull out any different resources from that specific object. And right now, what we will do is almost ready for the state file part. Just need to find the right screen. Probably I can even move this away just to make more real estate. So let's go to our resource group. Probably it's going to be this one. Yep. So storage account. You remember this? Do you remember, guys, that how we created the secure file for Windows password, right? So this guy, this is our state file. JSON is format because again, Terraform, it's still JSON. It's just more JSON on steroid to make our life easier, not to worry about different curly braces and commas. Just easier to write the code, right? But under the hood, when you compile, it's still going to be in the JSON format. But in here, if you do edit, I'm gonna come back to. Just want to make sure I'm on the right piece. So right, what you just saw, right? I copied the name of our variable. Here you go. This is our password. So basically, what it means, right? And this is first gotcha. That state file needs to be encrypted or isolated, and for that matter, right? We want if we still utilize blob storage, we might even use a private link to access it, right, more securely. Because even the endpoints is not gonna give us all of this, enough of them from security perspective. Encryption, of course, or even like in financial institution, like one of my customer, we store the state file on the NAS, and even so we deploy the resources from Azure DevOps. We use Terraform, but it's still coming on premises. So basically, we decided it's going to be more secure, and not just only in financial institutions. I'm sure government is going to be exactly the same way, but it is what it is. So far, any questions on this perspective?
Yeah, Len, I have a question. Is there any way to store that password in Key Vault?
You can pull out the password from the key vault. That's a good question, right? And what I did, just basically to recap with the rest of the guys, right? Right now, I'm pulling the value from the variables, right? And I'm just making it secure here. I could as well link my key vault and pull it out from the key vault. The thing is, Terraform is going to still unclear this password, and it's going to store in the clear text. So there's no way around it. The only way around it is just to make sure you put another encryption on the top of it. I mean, it becomes a hassle actually. That's really a downside. The bright side of it, as you can see, well, like what we are looking at this right now, right? This is all of my resources which ever been deployed right here. So basically, if I need to do some troubleshooting, or if somebody needs to review it, they don't even need to have an access to the portal, right? They can just pretty much go over this file. I mean, that's kind of, I believe, it's a good stuff. Again, with the password, yeah, unfortunately, but you cannot be, I guess, perfect in any way in all of the cases. So, with that being said, that pretty much, I would say, all. For the state file itself, guys, I just want to also kind of like get your interest on this very quickly. And I'm going to share this link as well. GitHub. I think it's in this one. Just bear with me for 1 second. Just only for the educational purposes. I'm not saying you should follow the same strategy, but just only if you want to play with a state file, that would be the good example. So basically what I do here is I say I have multiple jobs, and those jobs, if you recall from our pipeline, right, it would be those, like when we deploy different, like let's say even here, right, I do init, but inside of the initialization, I'm deploying everything right now, the bastion, the ARM templates, all of these pieces. I could chop it down. And by what I mean by chop it down, it would be, I would create the network security group, I would create network, I would create VM, then probably another VM. However, what you would need to do in that matter, right, you would need to make sure that all of those different resources right now can talk to each other, meaning that the subnet here would know what NSG it needs to be assigned to, or NSG would need to be assigned to that subnet, vice versa, right? The VM would need to know about the subnet. And the way you do this stuff is basically, let me just go back right here. I'm not going to spend too much of your time, guys. It's just, again, just with more questions, feel free to reach out. But let's say if I would go ahead to my, see the backend, I'm not doing anything. I'm just only doing the declaration because it's going to be initialized right here, right? So this is where I'm going to specify. And by the way, this example has been run from my local workstation. So that's why I'm using the PowerShell to do initialization, plan, and apply. Then basically what I would do is I would come over to the network. See, I'm creating the library, module library. And we can recap this on very quickly too. I need to pass line 3, 4, and 5, those specific keys, in order for me to pull out that specific NSG. So when I would check out this library, right, and provide those variables, I would pull out my resources. But in here, if I do very quickly, see, when I need to link this NSG, all I need to do right now, I don't need to provide the NSG ID. I'm just going to say, hey, module, find the module lib, and get from that module lib NSG ID. And very quickly to recap how all of this stuff is going to work, to make it more clear. And guys, feel free to stop me and ask any questions if you'd like. In my first NSG, in my first job, which is NSG, I'm using output, right? And I'm saying, hey, in your state file, make sure you capture the NSG ID for me. Then, when you go to library, what this module is going to do, right? It's going to get those variables, the one which we are passing from the second job, network job, right? Based on this, it's going to say, okay, now I know where state file is. Now I also know in that, where state file is, in which storage account container, and what the name of this file. Once I get to that state file, pull out this NSG ID for me. Again, you see this is output. So now module is aware. Before it was NSG, which did output. Second part, it's module is doing this output. And the finalized, like to build that virtual triangle, is going to be network, which is, again, right here. And that's going to be NSG ID. But it's going to come here from library, right? And this is two by the way. So it's basically module lib. Any questions on this perspective? And I guess, guys, I can pause for a second. If you have any question, we'll be more than happy to answer. But if not, then I don't know, actually, I see Andrew just joined. Andrew, maybe if you have any questions, I'm just going to pick up randomly on your name.
I don't know, Len, do you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly.
If you can explain a little bit about state file, how it's, what format it's using when it stores the state files, if it's encrypted or not by default.
Yeah, I think you joined it late. I'm sorry, man, but we just covered that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we just went over this stuff. It basically unencrypted all of the passwords, whatever passwords you have. I'm just gonna do very quickly, guys, if you don't mind. Just to recap this piece. If you go back to the Bastion and you look at the password, box actually right here, right? So that password, which is really encrypted in our case when we run the pipeline, because the password is here encrypted, as you can see, star, 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 star. But in the real life, when you would come over to the state file and you look for password, it is unencrypted.
So the state file itself is a JSON file, as I understand, right? But it's useful outside of Terraform, correct?
Yes, because Terraform itself, it's all JSON. So whenever you compile, because you might as well, if you do .tf.json, Terraform would understand it. It still requires .tf in the extension file, but it will understand JSON format perfectly.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you for the question. Brandon, I don't know, I'm just picking up any names, guys. Cool. I'll take the silence as no questions, guys. Just
No
Brandon,
questions
please
from
go
me,
ahead.
Len. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Oh man,
Cool.
you're good. It's awesome.
Guys, just thanks, Brandon. Thanks for the feedback. Guys, just keep in mind, right? So for the next sessions, what we will do again, I'm gonna share this repo with you, right? So James, it's really gonna dive into the state file and all of this good stuff. I feel like he's more expert, and I don't want to be clumsy here because again, it's my expertise, but he knows it so much better. Specifically when you move your state not even said, like when you run this pipeline init plan and apply, right, and you're moving between different pods, it depends what you're deploying, right? If you're deploying, let's say 300 resources, it's going to be multiple tons of files, specifically with modules as well. If you recall from our previous conversation, right, all of the modules going to be cached in that Terraform folder, right? So how would you move those multiple files? So he's even showing his trick. When he zip them up, he's unzipping them, let's say in init, he would zip them in plan. He's gonna move it over to plan job, unzip it, then just take only some pieces of the file which requires for the plan, but other pieces will be moved over to the apply. I don't want to concentrate on this too much because he definitely gonna do the better job. And if you have any interest to look at this beforehand, feel free to jump to all of those links, and then you can see here, as a matter of fact, this is his repo. There's another good docs here as well. So again, with more questions, feel free to reach out. And I think this is it, guys. Gonna stop the recording.